This is a certified beat from Mr. Blaze. Up here with WesBlaze, on to the next phase.
Hey, Flat Earth family, this is Amber Plaster.
This is Nate Wolf, Fired for Truth, and you are listening to the Geocentric Eccentric with WesBlaze.
This is WesBlazeMuziK, the Geocentric Eccentric
on Flat Earth Radio Live.
FERlive.com.
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 And ye shall know the truth. And the truth shall make you free.
Hey, this is Mikey Jenny from Truth to the Youth, and y'all need to wake up live with my boy WesBlaze on the Geocentric Eccentric. Yeah!
Haha, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Si hablan español, buenas noches. Parlez-vous français, bonsoir. Sprechen Sie Deutsch. Guten Abend. And welcome to the third installment of my show, the Geocentric Eccentric. And I'll be your one and only host for the preceding segment, and I am WesBlaze. All praises and gratitude to the one Messiah, Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, that sacrificed himself, God in the flesh, to atone for our sin and pay the penalty of death so that we may have eternal life with him in the kingdom of heaven. Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Woo! And a loving thank you to my newfound audience who are joining me and listening in to these messages that I'm undeniably being called to share. You know, the old saying goes something to the effect of, I don't just like the sound of my voice, so when I speak, it's for a reason. And I mean what I say, so I say what I mean. But it would be nothing other than forgotten bits and bytes of sound waves lost in the sea of the infinitely expanding internet if it weren't for each and every one of you that tune in and hear me out. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you all. Before my next show, many of us will witness the cosmic event being coined the Super Blood Wolf Moon. It will be the only total lunar eclipse of 2019, and it occurs on Monday, January 21st. This coming Monday, right? It will be visible from North and South America starting around 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 o'clock Eastern Time where I am. And it will be one giant debunk of the heliocentric model hanging in the firmament for all to see. So on today's show, I'm going to go over in detail what we are commonly taught will be happening to cause this lunar eclipse and other lunar phenomena. I'll go over what measurable and observable reality tells us about the moon, and then we'll compare all of that to what the perfect word of God says about this lunar luminary he called Yareach. So, it ought to be an intriguing and informative show tonight, and I hope someone out there finds some useful knowledge to maybe contemplate as we all spectate this coming celestial event. With that being said, I'm going to kick off a music mix to get into, and we will be back with more truth talk for your truth walk on the Geocentric Eccentric. It's Flat Earth Radio Live, baby, yeah.
Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement.
Have you ever dreamed of going up to outer space? Or maybe meeting other beings from another place? Have you ever wondered what it's like on other planets? Then you watch a science show and come to believe you understand it? You feel empowered by the knowledge and you feel enlightened, listening to Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson. But then you wake up and you start to see the obvious. Life is just a lie and this whole world ain't what we thought it was. NASA's missions to the moon were never completed. They just filmed them in a room and people believe it. I used to wonder what it's like to be an astronaut. Now when I see them acting, I can't help but to laugh a lot. They give us cartoons and they claim that we live on a ball, but it's flat and it's not moving or spinning at all. Why you lying to us, man? That's something that we wanna know. After that, you're gonna have to pack up all your stuff and go.
Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement.
History has been rewritten by winners of wars, the Jesuit order, Khazars, Freemasons, and more. They pulled the veil over our eyes, and it's time to awaken. Through organized indoctrination, our minds have been taken. It's time we take our power back and we rescue our people. The Vatican and the bankers are like Resident Evil. They may have had the greatest plan that was ever concocted, but Illuminati never thought that they'd ever be spotted. They're manufacturing reality all in our heads. They tell us if the earth is flat then we'll fall off the edge, but if it is a spinning ball we won't fall off it then. And gravity is our imaginary magic friend. Why is water always flat when unmanipulated? Why are pictures of the earth computer generated? Why you lying to us, man? That's something that we wanna know. After that, you're gonna have to pack up all your stuff and go.
Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement.
Dear NASA, it's becoming 100% crystal clear that you and the other space programs that are in operation are connected and are deceiving the entire world. More and more people are waking up every single day, and we are now able to see right through you. But what we really want to know is, why are you lying? Sincerely, me and the great people of this earth.
Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement.
You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Well, a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. That's the title of a video that I watched on YouTube. You can see astronauts hanging from wires, proving that astronauts and NASA are liars. They analyze photos and highlight mistakes with the moon landing missions. They show it was faked. You can see them faking the photos of Earth. They use a round window to fake the curve. That's suspicious, don't you think? Yeah, listen up. I watched another documentary called Astronauts Gone Wild. Astronaut Buzz Aldrin gets a little riled. All he was asked to do was to swear to God that he went to the moon, but he would not. He was faced with a moon landing denier. Had a chance to show that he ain't no liar, but Buzz decided to punch that dude just for asking him to swear if he went to the moon. That's suspicious. So, do you still believe we went to the moon? Do you still believe what they're telling you? Just connect the dots and pretty soon you'll find out what I found out too. But if you question this stuff, you'll be labeled a loon. You'll be called a conspiracy theory buffoon, but I don't care, man. I'm still gonna make this tune, cause I know that we didn't go to the moon.
Why don't you swear in the Bible that you walked on the moon? You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't.
And how about those moon rocks they gave to museums? And thousands of people did see them. But one museum took a closer look. They soon realized that something's afoot. The rock they were given turned out to be a fake, just a piece of old wood, not a rock from space. Yeah, when God made the moon, he saw it was good, but apparently made it from petrified wood. Yeah, that's suspicious. Listen up. In another museum sits an astronaut suit. Take a good look at the tread on the boot. It doesn't match up with the prints on the moon. And y'all still believe what they're telling you? Or how about that phone call that Nixon made to the moon that's 250,000 miles away? When I can't get a signal on my cell phone line, I guess phones were better in '69. Well, do you still believe we went to the moon? Do you still believe what they're telling you? Just connect the dots and pretty soon you'll find out what I found out too. But if you question this stuff, you'll be labeled a loon. You'll be called a conspiracy theory buffoon. But I don't care, man. I'm still gonna make this tune, cause I know that we didn't go to the moon.
And it certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made in the White House.
Yeah, you went straight through those Van Allen belts. It wasn't a problem, right? Nothing was felt. But now you say it's a problem and you can't get through. This problem needs to be solved, according to you. But didn't you solve that problem back in '69 and you flew straight through them 5 more times? You wonder why I think it's fake when there are so many Apollo mistakes, like the telemetry data that's all gone missing. 13,000 reels, are you kidding? A giant leap for all mankind, but you lost the data and no one can find. Come on, man, are you kidding? Do you still believe we went to the moon? Do you still believe what they're telling you? Just connect the dots and pretty soon you'll find out what I found out too. But if you question this stuff, you'll be labeled a loon. You'll be called a conspiracy theory buffoon. But I don't care, man. I'm still gonna make this tune, cause I know that you can't go. No, there's no blast crater from the lunar module. Probably because that thing is just a model. Or the flag that flutters with no atmosphere. Don't you think that's a bit queer? Intersecting shadows means another light source. Do I think it's fake? Yeah, of course. The whole thing was filmed on a Hollywood set. Directed by Kubrick is my best bet. The moon's so cool, we'd love to explore it, but we can't get past low Earth orbit. Do your research, people, I think you'll find. But NASA admits that a bunch of times. Listen.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to. And we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
I have 2 brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may. When you were carrying out that incredible moonwalk, did you find that the surface was equally firm anywhere, or were there harder and softer spots that you could detect? And secondly, when you looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars and the solar corona in spite of the glare?
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I don't remember seeing anything.
9 steps are what you take walking on the moon. I hope my legs don't break walking on.
This time I'd like to introduce the Apollo 11 crew. Astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin.
Bob.
What the hell you doing? What the Stanley Kubrick have to do with astronauts and movement? Who the hell you fooling in this whole stupid flat earth movement? Well, you don't like assuming if it's science proven. You a college student shouldn't be assuming green screen, sound stage, soundproofing. Time to film a movie shoot. Gotta use my tools in a glass cage, astronaut suit, footprint don't match the boot. Been to the moon once and ain't been back since. And I'm just trying to figure out where the tax dollars went. NASA.
You want me to knock you in the head? Well, I want you to swear to God on the Bible that you walked on the moon. Okay. If you walked on the moon, we're given the opportunity to swear to God that you walked on the moon. I'm going to give you the opportunity to get the hell knocked out of you, so don't leave me alone.
Walking on.
Well, I take your stuff and get the
Not a huge fan of the award for the best rapper, but they give the Moon Man award to the best actor. Guess we must go straight to the source. Let's ask NASA. How do you explain the occurrence of lunar waves? Why do we only see one half of the lunar face? How do you explain air bubbles you view in space? Why is it so important to lie to the human race? Million-mile internet that travels light years, but they can show a space shuttle re-enter the atmosphere. Okay, to blast off, you gotta practice Freemasonry, an acronym that stands for not a space agency.
Some may say, I'm wishing my days away. No way. And if it's the price I pay, some say, tomorrow's another day. You stay, walking on the moon.
And put your hand on the Bible. Swear to God you walked on the moon.
Mr. Cybro, knowing you, that's probably a fake part.
Walking on. Walking on the moon. Walking on. Walking on the moon. Walking on. Walking on the moon. Walking on.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight.
Welcome back. That was a mix of ODD TV with Dear NASA, followed by the conspiracy music guru, Alex Michael, Flat Earth Man, with Do You Still Believe We Went to the Moon? And we wrapped it all up with Stanley Kubrick by B.O.B. Great thoughts are shared in those songs regarding the moon. In specific, the moon landing gets brought up, but the moon landing hoax, or hoaxes, should I say, would take up the entirety of a whole different show altogether. However, the moon itself is a mysterious celestial body that has an extensive amount of research topics surrounding it. And in homage to the impending lunar eclipse set for this coming Monday, I want to dive into some of these topics with you guys. So, the super blood wolf moon, right? Why the cryptic name that sounds like something out of an anime or a bad 70s Soul Train song? Let's break it on down. This particular eclipse is a combination of a variety of lunar events all happening simultaneously. We first have the word super in reference to a supermoon, which is defined as the phenomenon whereby the moon appears particularly large in the sky. It is either a full moon or a new moon that occurs closely to the event known as a perigee, which is said to be the closest that the moon comes to the Earth in its elliptic orbit, quote-unquote. Wikipedia says this results in a slightly larger than usual apparent size of the lunar disk as viewed from Earth. I love when they refer to it as a disk in mainstream sources, right? On a side note, the association of the moon with both oceanic and crustal tides has led to claims that the supermoon phenomenon may be associated with increased risk of events like earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Let's remember that for a little later. We might have to revisit that concept in the scriptures. Next, we see the word blood, right, in the super blood wolf moon. We got super, now the blood in the blood moon part, indicating that this supermoon will also be a blood moon. This is, of course, indicative of the crimson color of the moonlight, as it emits a red-orange glow during this lunar event. Unlike a solar eclipse, which may require travel to see, total lunar eclipses can often be observed from the entire nighttime portion of the Earth, right? The last blood moon was July 27th, 2018, and was only visible across Africa and parts of Asia. That, last total lunar eclipse. This year's total eclipse will be the first to be seen in its entirety in North America in nearly 3.5 years. And if you miss this one, you will have to wait until May 26th of 2021 for the next one, as this is also recorded to be the last blood moon eclipse of the decade. Obviously, what we are taught according to the mainstream narrative regarding the heliocentric theory suggests that these eclipses are the result of an alignment of the proposed solar system in which the Earth passes between the sun and moon, casting an alleged shadow, but somehow refracting sunlight through Earth's atmosphere to cause the full visible surface of the moon to have brilliant reddish luminescence. We will talk more about that in a bit as well, but as sky watchers across the Americas prepare to congregate for a front row seat to the rare cosmic event as 3 lunar phenomena converge, we are left with the final descriptive title of this eclipse being that of the wolf moon. Ow! Right? This unusual designation is attributed to the cultural name given to the full moon in the month of January. For millennia, people have used the movement of the moon to keep track of the passing months and set schedules for calendars, planting, harvesting, feasts, and holy days, too. Ancient cultures the world over have given these monthly full moons each a unique name based on the behavior of the plants, animals, or weather during that month. Native Americans and medieval Europeans named January's full moon after the howling of hungry wolves during the midwinter scarcity of food. Other names for this month's full moon include the Old Moon and Ice Moon. Right, so they had a name for each and every one of the month's full moons, and so February's was called the Snow Moon. The typically cold, snowy weather of February in North America earned its full moon this name, as well as the Storm Moon and the Hunger Moon. March sometimes gets called a Worm Moon. Native Americans called this last full moon of winter the Worm Moon after the worm trails that would appear in the newly thawed ground, and others were Chaste Moon and the Sap Moon after the tapping of the maple trees for March. April is commonly the Pink Moon. Northern Native Americans called it this after a species of early blooming wildflower. In other cultures, April's moon is called the Sprouting Grass Moon, the Egg Moon, or the Fish Moon. May brings the Flower Moon. After the abundant blooming stage most plant life exhibit in May, it's also the Hare Moon, the Corn Planting Moon, the Milk Moon, whereas June has a moon named the Strawberry Moon. In North America, the harvesting of strawberries in June gives that month's full moon its name. Europeans dubbed it the Rose Moon, while other cultures named it the Hot Moon for the beginning of the summer heat. July is the Buck Moon. Male deer, which shed their antlers every year, begin to regrow them in July, hence the Native American name for July's full moon. Other names are the Thunder Moon for the month's many summer storms, and Hay Moon after the July hay harvest. August has the Sturgeon Moon. North American fishing tribes called August full moon the Sturgeon Moon since the species was abundant during this month. It's also been called the Grain Moon and the Red Moon for the reddish hue it often takes on in the summer haze. September has the Harvest Moon, which is the most familiar named moon because September's Harvest Moon refers to the time of year when the autumn equinox, when the crops are gathered. It also refers to the moon's particularly bright appearance and early rise, which lets farmers continue harvesting into the night. Other names include the Corn Moon and the Barley Moon. October is the Hunter's Moon. The first moon after the Harvest Moon is the Hunter's Moon, so it's named as the preferred month to hunt. Summer fattened deer and fox unable to hide now in bare fields. Like the Harvest Moon, the Hunter's Moon is also particularly bright and long in the sky, giving hunters the opportunity to stalk prey at night. Other names include the Travel Moon and the Dying Grass Moon. The November is the Beaver Moon. is one of the names for it. Some of it comes from Native Americans setting beaver traps during this month, while others say the name comes from the heavy activity of beavers building their winter dams. Another name for the November moon is frost moon. And finally, December brings us the cold moon. The coming of winter, no doubt, connotates this, and also the long night moon, since December has the shortest days of the year. Then, of course, there is the blue moon. Each year, the moon completes its final cycle about 11 days before the sun finishes its yearly cycle of southern declination and northern inclination. These days add up, and every 2.5 years or so, there is an extra full moon in a year, and we call that a blue moon. The term is commonly used today to describe the second full moon of a calendar month, but it was originally the name given to the third full moon of a season containing 4 full moons. Interesting stuff there, right? So now we got that understanding out of the way, like where we come up with these different animal names for the moon and why this one is called the super blood wolf moon, right? It's a super moon, total lunar eclipse, and it happens to be in January. Nonetheless, let's examine these commonly accepted ideas about our moon that, the mainstream narratives hold as scientific fact. The moon is said to be a spherical body of rock and cooled magma. So it's thought of as a physical landmass serving as a satellite to the Earth, locked in an orbit where only one static face of the moon is visible from Earth at all times, for all of recorded history. It's called a synchronous rotation, said to be caused by tidal locking, which they say results in the moon rotating about its axis in the same amount of time it takes to orbit Earth, right? We're taught the moon orbits the Earth from an average distance of 238,900 miles away with a 2,158-mile diameter. This just happens to be 400 times closer than the sun and 400 times smaller than the sun's diameter, or so we're told, which is how they're conveniently able to explain away why they appear the same size in our sky. You look up and see the moon and the sun. They don't look like the sun's 1.3 million times the size of Earth, but supposedly they say it is, right? It's accepted in mainstream cosmology that the moon is reflecting sunlight. I found it funny that some sources say the moon has a reflectance just slightly higher than that of worn asphalt. What? But because of the positioning of the sun and moon as the assumed solar system cycles, we're told we get our moon phases from the resulting shadows of the Earth and the direction of reflected sunlight. Here's one that irks me. The moon is thought to have formed about 4.51 billion years ago, that someone must have guessed and pulled out of nowhere. Maybe they measured that with a time machine, right? The most widely accepted explanation for the origin of the moon is that it formed from the debris left over after a giant impact between Earth and a Mars-sized body called Theia. They say the moon's far side has a crust that is 30 miles thicker than that of the near side, and this is thought to be because the moon fused from 2 different bodies, apparently. So they even made up a name for another planet that they can't prove existed for this made-up story. But as crazy as it is, that's what you'll find if you look up how the moon came to be. They jump through a lot of hoops of assumptions and leaps of logic to avoid just saying that God created it the way it is. And last but not least, the lunar eclipses are taught to every school kid as an eclipse in which the moon appears darkened as it passes into the Earth's shadow. Those are some of the key characteristics of what so-called science has to say about Earth's moon, but in reality, with what we can actually observe and record, verify, and test, a number of discrepancies seem to exist in contradiction, blatant contradiction to some of these ideas about the moon that are held as fact among the masses. For instance, does a ball of rock with a dust-covered surface serve as an effective reflector? Let's imagine that if it could. In every case we can reproduce of light reflecting off of a sphere, there's an observable gradient of shading that occurs from what's called a specular highlight, where the point on the sphere that's closest to the light source would have the brightest hot spot of the reflected light. We simply don't observe that with the moon. When the moon is full, it is evenly lit from top to bottom. What we do see appears as a disk or a hemisphere at most, displaying the same exact unchanging set of markings on the same unchanging face that's shown from the heavens for all time. You know, they say that the markings that we see on the face of the moon are said to be craters, okay? And craters are, you know, allegedly a hole from where a meteor, meteorite, asteroid, or what have you, had struck, you know, a space rock, struck the surface of the moon. It's said that Earth has these too. But what's very interesting about these so-called craters that are impact sites from these space rocks is that they're all coming in at they would have had to hit the moon at a perfect 90-degree angle to create, you know, you don't see any drag, you don't see any trails from when these so-called comets hit this surface. They all came in perfectly and left a circle imprint right there, right? And so it's interesting to imagine that because we always see the same exact face of the moon and all of those so-called craters are perfect 90-degree angle, then are we to expect that those craters came from Earth? Were we at war with the moon at one time where we were shooting asteroids back and forth at each other? And so that's why you got all these holes on the same face that faces the Earth? It's, you know, it's crazy because we get told that we have those same things here, yet there's no trace of these giant space rocks that supposedly left them. And it's just, there's an alarming amount of evidence that says that they are sinkholes rather than an impact site of some massive metal rock from space. But that being said, many times throughout the year, you know, we have the moon visible in the daytime sky while the sun is still out. I see it all the time, right? Certain times of the year especially. And both of the sun and the moon are above the horizon when you see it. You can look to the left, see the moon, look to the right, see the sun. Sometimes they kind of get closer to each other, but as the sun will rise and set, quickly changing positions in the sky throughout the day, whatever phase the moon is in, it never seems to be affected by the position of the sun from day to night. Have you noticed that? And there are plenty times when this is happening that the lit portion of the moon doesn't correlate to the direction of the sunlight it's said to be reflecting. Another way we can confirm the moon is not reflecting the hot, dry light of the sun is by measuring the temperatures of surfaces that are exposed to direct moonlight versus the temperatures of surfaces that are in the moon shade, you know, not exposed to direct moonlight. A laser thermometer is easy to find at most hardware stores, and it is a simple tool for this experiment. Many have been conducted with a variety of tools and variables, the majority of which conclude that a moonlit surface will be typically read colder than any moon-shaded surface, as in the moonlight is cold. In the perpetual harmony that is this realm, it's evident that the moon was made as an opposite to the sun. We can, you know, all attest to the fact that the sun is a hot, drying, it has the energy and the light that it puts off is very drying and antiseptic, whereas it's been known by many ancient cultures for centuries that the moon has septic qualities, and it almost has a moisture in the air about its light, whereas it's cold as well. So evidence of this is that, you know, Native Americans in particular that did a lot of hunting, or probably any hunters throughout time have known that if you set your animals out after you've hunted and you're drying them out, you set them out during the day. If you did so at night, then you wake up to putrid, rotting corpses, you know? And so the sunlight was known to be drying and antiseptic, where the moonlight is kind of damp and cold and septic, putrid almost. And so I find that interesting. And there's another example. You know, people say that they imagine anytime a source is putting off light, that it's emitting and exuding an energy that would have to be construed as a heat source, right? That's light from what we know and what we think we know. Whereas there are sources in nature that show it is reproducible for light to be cold. For instance, there is the light of a firefly, a lightning bug, some call it, right? Did you know that that light emits no heat whatsoever? So it's on record that these insects contain a chemical that is luminescent, that's able to produce light. And so it's just another example that you can have light that's not exactly putting off heat, you know, doesn't have to. It's how God made it. Side note, trivia, is that it's very interesting and a little alarming what the scientists decided to name the chemical that is responsible for this luminescence in a firefly. It's called luciferin, probably, and it's reminiscent of Lucifer being the light bearer, right? One of the most dramatic sights in the night sky and inspiration for poets, artists, and lovers for millennia have been full moons, and they captivate us like nothing else. Every month, Earth's moon goes through its phases, waning and waxing in its constant transformation from new moon to full moon and back again. Full moons occur every 29.5 days or so, as the moon allegedly moves to the side of Earth directly opposite the sun, and is said to be reflecting the sun's rays off its full face and appearing as a brilliant, perfectly circular disk. Meanwhile, I repeat, the Earth is supposedly between the sun and moon at this time, during a normal full moon, as we were all taught. What? It's as if there should be a lunar eclipse every night if the moon is on the other side of the Earth from the sun, and you have the Earth between the moon and the sun. Then Earth should be casting a shadow over the moon anytime the moon and sun are on opposite sides of the Earth. Do you follow me? So it just, that right there, their explanation for what a full moon is seems to kind of debunk what their explanation for a lunar eclipse is. I don't know, that's maybe my thoughts on it, but nonetheless, it's interesting, right? There are times when I've seen a full moon during the day, and so you have both the full moon above the horizon as well as the sun above the horizon, and it's as if that thing is supposed to be reflecting the sun's light, and it's a full moon right now, but then the sun's over there behind it. I don't get how more people aren't noticing this stuff and questioning it, and I think a lot of people do kind of deep down, they just, you know, a little ashamed to admit it. They don't want to appear dumb. They don't want to feel stupid because there's an answer, they think, and they just don't understand. But there is an answer, and a lot of people don't understand, and I'm not ashamed. I wasn't ashamed to admit that I didn't get it, because that's something I questioned all my life. How do we see the same, face of the moon? I always saw this man in the moon. It's kind of like the two eyes. You see a nose, you kind of see a mouth, and he's tilted, and he just looks concerned, I always thought. And he's just looking down, the man in the moon. I saw this face, and you think of the song, I see the moon and the moon sees me. That to me is one of those little cultural hints we tell each other, that the moon kind of appears as something that is you-centered or me-centered, all of us centered, meaning it is almost as if it's projected to each one of our perceptions. Individually, the world is what it is according to each set of eyes, you know what I mean? Depending on who you ask, they're going to say they see it differently. And so, what if the moon, or all of the luminaries, were projected to each of our perspectives individually? And it's as if it shines for our eyes to see. You see what I mean? That's a point that other people have made before too, and it seems like it's possible. Just because no matter where you are on Earth, when you see the moon, you see that same face. And if it were really a spherical body of any kind rotating around, it's hard to imagine. Really, it gets far-fetched to believe that after hundreds of thousands of years, so they say, that you wouldn't see other faces or other parts of the moon, even just a sliver of another side. You never see it change. So I always find that interesting. It's something that I questioned since I was younger about how the heliocentric model works, or just the globe model with this supposed moon satellite orbiting around us. But it just seemed unlikely, but they explain it away with this tidal locking and just how it just so happens to all work together, but it does work together, and just not the way they say it does. One of the arguments that globe defenders tend to use in support of the globe is that in the southern hemisphere, quote unquote, the moon is observed to be flipped opposite, upside down from what can be observed from what's called the northern hemisphere. So just to kind of break this down, this is what is seen. This is what can be observed, an upside down moon, if you're in Australia, compared to what can be seen of the moon right side up appearing to somebody in America, right? Just for perspective purposes. So for people that are trying to understand this, if you unfold the bottom of the globe at the dead center of the South Pole where they say it is, and you fold that out to a flat map, and it will resemble the azimuthal equidistant map, the Gleason projection, you're going to have the North Pole in the very center of the plane. And on the geocentric model, you have the sun and the moon are small and localized lights in the firmament that are going around in circles, accounting for the seasons in their respective paths. So if the northern hemisphere really just equates to the central region of this plane, and the southern hemisphere is really just the outermost region of the circle of the Earth, then if you're standing in Australia and somebody else is standing in America and they're able to both look at the moon at the same time, then it's as if you painted a picture on the ceiling of the moon and two people are standing on opposite sides of the room with their backs facing the walls, looking up at this picture on the ceiling. And of course, one of them is going to basically seeing a 6 while the other one's seeing a 9. You see what I mean? Meaning that, of course, it appears upside down to somebody standing on the far side of the plane compared to what somebody else is seeing on the other side, opposite side, right? So that kind of breaks that down into very easy to understand. Just tape a picture of the moon on your ceiling and walk from one side of the room to the other and tell me that proves that the floor of your room is spherical in nature. You know what I mean? All too often, globe defenders want to point to the heavens at celestial bodies that are completely not even analogous to the Earth to say that proves what the shape of the ground that we walk on is. If you see a cloud, do you say that the Earth must be a cloud? If you walk into a dance hall and you see a disco ball, do you imagine that the floor must have to be a sparkly, shiny, rotating sphere just because the disco ball is hanging in the air? Obviously not, but that's the same kind of logic, leap in logic and assumptions that are made when people say, well, the moon is round, the sun is round. Arguably, we can't even prove that is the case. As I mentioned earlier, at best, the moon appears as a hemisphere, just based on, the kind of the shading that we can observe when we zoom in on it. But, to say that it were a sphere would be to imply that there's another side of it that just is not observable. That being said, there's another interesting event that has to do with lunar eclipses. To get back on the topic of this upcoming lunar eclipse, there is something called, I used to call it the Selenalion. I now know it's a Selenalian eclipse, and it's a form of a lunar eclipse when both the sun and the eclipsed moon can be observed at the same time. Now, according to the globular theory, a lunar eclipse occurs when the sun, earth, and moon are in a direct line, but it is on record that since about the 15th century, over 50 eclipses have occurred while both the sun and moon have been visible above the horizon. And that was a quote from F.H. Cook from a book he wrote called The Terrestrial Plane, which, it's surprising to find out that I had never heard or learned of this type of eclipse, but it's no secret why they wouldn't have taught us this, because it really just kind of blows the theory out of the water of how a lunar eclipse even, occurs. And so there's been multiple eclipses, one very recently for a lunar eclipse that happened during the daytime, and we got a lot of pictures from the community, a lot of photographs people took to kind of show, look what we're seeing. And oddly enough, the shadow that's supposedly the shadow that's on this moon, as it eclipses, one could only surmise that if the alignment were taking place, as they say, that causes the eclipse, then that shadow would happen, then that shadow would be moving upwards from the bottom of the moon. Because you have the Earth supposedly casting this shadow, and so the Earth moving between the sun, you should see the shadow, because you're seeing the moon above the horizon, you should see the shadow of the Earth cast on the moon traveling from the bottom upwards. But the opposite is happening during these eclipses. And so there's just an alarming amount of evidence piling up, mountains of proof against what we're told. And so we get this false understanding, if the eclipsed moon and the sun are both in the same sky, then how is it the Earth's shadow how is it that the Earth's shadow is causing the eclipse? It's not. This is called the Selenalian lunar eclipse, and like I say, it happened 15 times. Over 50 times since the 15th century. And, a lot of people just haven't heard of it. But the Royal Astronomical Society has documented more than 50 of them since the 1500s, where both the sun and the moon were simultaneously visible above the horizon during the eclipse. Unfortunately for heliocentrists, all three bodies would have to be aligned in a 180-degree syzygy for the current model to be geographically possible. This suggests something else is responsible, right? Something completely different. Another point I would like to kind of make about the moon, of what we can observe about it. I haven't personally seen this, but it makes sense that other people claim to have. There are photographs. There's photographic evidence of stars shining through the moon's surface. And so we're told the moon is about 240,000 miles away, and some of the nearest stars are light years away, trillions of miles away. A light year is said to be 6 trillion miles. And the closest star is said to be 4.2 light years away. So if you're seeing a star in what appears to be in front of the moon, then something's up there, huh? Suspicious, right? Something fishy is going on. But all too often, we've been given photographs and record of this being the case. The stars shining through the moon. Sir James South of the Royal Observatory in Kensington wrote in a letter to the Times newspaper, April 7th, 1848, that the star, instead of disappearing at the moment the moon's edge came into contact with it, apparently glided over the moon's dark face, as if it had been seen through a transparent moon. And so, if that can be recorded as it has, then the moon must be at least semi-transparent. That's why the dark part of the moon is always the same color as the sky. So during the daytime, you see any dark parts of the moon or within the areas that are said to be craters. During the daytime, you see kind of a blue sky showing through these darker parts of the moon that aren't as lit. And then at night, you see black, dark sky behind these darker parts of the moon. And so it's just, more evidence that it may be a semi-transparent disk. And it's always the same color as the sky, and it's not a terra firma object Freemasons and governments can land on. If I'm going to talk about the moon landing at all, I'll say that I don't think it's possible to land on a light. Okay? It's not a physical body. It's something that's not even possible to be landed on, walked on, moonwalked on, or drive a buggy around on, or play golf on, make a landline telephone call on. I'll leave it at that. But when we come back from the break, we will be diving into scriptures. I've saved the best for last, and so I look forward to seeing what the Word of God has to say about this mysterious luminary on the Geocentric Eccentric with WesBlaze.
Because you can see the stars.
Oh, yeah.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
It's not black and white. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of polka dots.
Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
There's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas.
Away from the sun, it's the darkest night you can imagine.
Hey, space boy, you broke my rocket man heart. Where are the stars? Is it bright or is it dark? The vacuum of space, oh, the tomfoolery.
This is Nathan Thompson with the official Flat Earth and Globe discussion. Born to be viral, you can lead a globe earther to flat water, but you can't make them think. You're joining WesBlaze on the Geocentric Eccentric.
What up, y'all? It's your man Head Crack for the Ricky Smiley Morning Show. Big up to WesBlazeMuziK doing his thing out there in K-Town. I know they miss your boy DJ Brown, but yo, keep doing big things and we gonna see each other at the top, alright? Keep it lateral, keep it moving, alright? No losing. Head Crack, out.
What it do, Flat Pack? We are back on the air after a quick commercial break. Thank you for hanging out with me. It means a lot. Before the break, I was just playing a song by Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms, and it's called Space is Fake. So I'm happy to spend this last hour with you guys, sharing my findings and speaking about these topics that are becoming increasingly relevant in many people's thoughts and lives, and will only continue to grow in significance, I firmly believe. To me, the importance of truth takes precedence in my life, for one. I don't want to be lied to, and when I find out I've been believing lies, I'm not one to pretend as if it doesn't matter. Secondly, I know that in John 14, verse 6, Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So to me, anything truthful comes from the source of love that is God, because we know from 1 John chapter 4 that God is love. Therefore, anything deceitful or any lie would in turn originate from another source. I think we could all make a pretty good guess where or who that source is, but let's look at the scriptures. Romans chapter 3 verse 4, God forbid. Yea, let God be true, but every man a liar, as it is written, that thou mightest be justified in thy sayings, and mightest overcome when thou art judged. So this first definition from the Bible for who a liar is says that every man is a liar, you know? I've certainly lied before, and I don't think I've ever met someone who hasn't. So yeah, by definition, we have all been liars and are always capable of lying. But thou shalt not bear false witness, right? I digress. 1 John chapter 2, verse 22 says, Who is a liar but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ? He is an antichrist that denieth the Father and the Son. So biblical definition 2 for a liar is someone that denies Jesus and God. And they are an antichrist, furthermore. We come across a lot of those, right? Not only unbelievers, but people that are outwardly against the truth of Christ. And I hate to see that we have a number of those becoming increasingly aggressive in the truth community and the flat earth community. You know, I pray for them daily because it's a scary time to be on that side of things, and I fear for them. But John chapter 8 verse 44 says, Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So finally, definition 3 says that the devil is a liar, but also that he is the father of all lies, and there's no truth in him, right? So there we have it. God is truth and love, so the devil's greatest weapons are lies and fear. Since God is the Word, Satan's strongest weapon against God for the souls of men is anything that discredits the Word. 1 John chapter 5 verse 10, He that believeth on the Son of God hath the witness in himself. He that believeth not God hath made him a liar, because he believeth not the record that God gave of his Son, which we know is the Bible, you know, the Word. And from the first verse in John, we can see in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. A lot of great stuff in John, right? So if you doubt the validity of the Word, then you effectively are doubting God, making God out to be a liar, and oftentimes believing the word of men above the word of God, which makes yourself a liar if, you were doing that. When we know men lie, That's usually one of my first questions to someone that fights with me about flat earth, biblical cosmology. I remind them that the government lies. We know they have, and we know they do. Denying that would be denial. But whereas old slaves wore chains, new slaves wear denial. And I don't mean that to be facetious at all. So I ask them, do they agree the government lies? They usually can't disagree, right? 99% of the time, people understand, they agree, the government has lied. They've been caught red-handed, right? So I then ask, what lie would they imagine could be too big for us to be told? What lie would be too big for them to tell? Could you make a guess? If you know a liar lies, like if you're in a relationship and you see that your spouse has cheated, you would have to suspect them of lying to you in other ways, or the cheating getting worse and lies becoming worse, right? Let's go to Proverbs chapter 17, verse 4. A wicked doer giveth heed to false lips, and a liar giveth ear to a naughty tongue. So the Bible basically says if you give heed to the words of known liars, then you are in turn a wicked liar. So it comes as no surprise that in 2 Timothy 3:1 we read, but evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. I thought it noteworthy that another relation to a negative waxing, so to say, that's spoken of in the word is in Matthew 24:12. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. So falling from grace into iniquity means that there will be less and less love. And believing deception absolutely takes part in this. This is why this is so important. In 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33, be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners. One more time, 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33, be not deceived because evil communications corrupt good manners. So it's as if when we allow ourselves to be deceived, then our heart can be corrupted. So I'm turned to Deuteronomy 11, verse 16, take heed to yourselves, that your heart be not deceived, and ye turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. It's saying if you're deceived, you're going to be turned aside to serve other gods and worship them, which is against the first commandment, since we know the commandments are important and still apply to us, right? Then, so the biggest of the deceptions today in these times, many are becoming convinced is the global deception of this whole Big Bang cosmology false belief system that perpetuates the idea that we live in an infinitely expanding universe that was created when nothing somehow exploded, and by accidental chance, stardust randomly coagulated into a spinning space ball that gave way to a single-celled organism springing forth from a rock. Then the cell somehow became fish that, turned to dinosaurs, that turned to apes, and eventually became human beings on a speck of floating dust in an ever-growing vacuous void of darkness and purposeless insignificance. Because the odds are, if you believe that, then there is an infinite possibility for extraterrestrial life forms that are likely much more advanced than us, right? But there's not one single shred of verifiable, irrefutable proof of any of it at all. On the contrary, it is a massive deception. It's not science. It takes blind faith to believe those theories stacked on top of theories, making it a godless religion of false doctrine, an indoctrinated belief system with no moral compass for its believers. When you live in that sort of spiritual mentality, really spiritual denial, everything becomes relative and reality is just a subjective blob while life becomes a meaningless prison of it is whatever you make of it. Reminds me of Aleister Crowley's Satanism motto, do what thou wilt. If the earth is the center of the universe, then the ideas of God, creation, and a purpose for human existence are resplendent. They're basically a given. But if the earth is just one of billions of planets revolving around billions of stars and billions of galaxies, then the ideas of God, creation, and a specific purpose for earth and human existence become highly implausible. Therefore, the deception of a spherical spinning earth is the foundation of a Darwinian evolution, a Freudian psychoanalysis, and Marxist communism, that led to slavery and racism and terrible acts, war and genocides. Indeed, the progressive emergence of the sodomite subculture into a government-protected, privileged class is the direct result of the prevailing theory of heliocentrism, being that the sun is at the center and all these other planets go around it, right? Heliocentrism. So how so, you ask? It is quite simple. To remove the earth as the center of God's creation and accept in its place an earth that is just one of millions of wandering planets in the universe removes man as God's unique creation made in his image. Once the centrality of earth in God's creation is removed, it is only a small half step further to remove the existence of God himself from the minds of men. So I know we stepped away from the moon there, but I wanted to let some scripture kind of set a framework for understanding that we have been deceived by the deceiver, and many others are still deceived. The majority of them because they don't even believe in the deceiver, because they don't believe in God. As a direct result of this false belief system we're all brainwashed with from birth that they call science, we call that scientism. Real science can be proven and does not disagree with Scripture. So, of course, the deceived won't believe in God's words where he details and outlines the creation of our world. Even many believers gloss right over some of the words used to describe creation because they largely disagree with the worldview that we've been taught, and conditioned with. And the worst is when a believer will argue against the word in favor of lies that were designed to discredit it, stating things like, they didn't have that technology that we do back then, they couldn't prove what we can prove now, or that they weren't smart enough, those guys that wrote the Bible. So let's turn back to the word. Even if somebody hasn't read the whole Bible, then odds are they've attempted to begin at least the first page. And so that was me for a long time, honestly, I can say, until not long ago, here in the past few years. But let's do so real quick, just some of the key points here. So the first point made Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So that's point number 1. It was God. God did it. He made it. That's the key crucial point to understand there from the first part. And so then it goes on to say, and God said, let there be light. And there was light. I think the critical words there are God said. And then there was light. So his voice, something about just the fact that his sound waves existed, they created light out of that. So that's something to keep in mind for the rest of creation here. As we know from, some facets of science will tell us that all matter and mass are particles of light that are, condensed and moving at different frequencies to make, the different densities of the mass that we're aware of, solid, liquid, and gas states, right? So he also says the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So point number 3 here from the first couple verses is that the earth has a face. So anybody that knows geometry would know that a sphere, the three-dimensional geometric shape of a sphere, is said to have 0 faces. And so for, the Bible to talk about the earth having a face would mean that geometrically speaking, it's not a sphere. So we have this being the first day, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So that's the first day. Okay, then he said something crucial that a lot of people don't know what this word means. And I'm excited that I know about it because it's one of my favorite parts to kind of research and understand about this new understanding of the biblical cosmology that God said in verse 6 of Genesis chapter 1, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. So we get from that alone that firmament is something firm, right? Well, from the prefix of the word there, it sounds like it is, but then it also says that it divides 2 bodies of waters, meaning it would have to be something solid or firm, 3-dimensional, physical, for it to divide things like that, to divide physical matter apart from each other. So verse 7, God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the waters from the firmament, which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. There you go. So firmament, first day, This evening and the morning, next, the second day, and the third day, land and sea and plant life appears. Okay, so then we go over down to the fourth day when all of a sudden he finally creates the sun. The fourth day, the sun, the moon, and the stars become visible. So in verse 14, God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and for years." So something I think is cool about that is that the Hebrew calendar, is a solar lunar calendar that accounted for the cycles of the moon and the cycle of the sun. So what's cool about that is that the sun accounts for our days, obviously. The moon goes through a cycle about once every month, and the precession of the stars, the constellations, account for our years. It's a giant, perfectly designed timepiece, intelligently designed timepiece, quite obviously, and it's a beautiful thing. And so then he goes on to say in verse 15 of Genesis 1, "And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so." Okay, so he created light. He said, "Let there be light." And it's as if he used that to create the physical world, right? Because now he's created the lights in the firmament, which he says are the sun, the moon, and the stars. So that's interesting. And then we have verse 16, "And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day." So if this here earth were a sphere, in space, in this heliocentric solar system, like they say it was, then for 4 days, this earth had no star to orbit around. Whereas that's kind of the basis of a solar system, is that you have to have a star, and that's where the planets kind of come from and get life from. So what was the earth orbiting around for 4 days before the sun was made, right? It wasn't, because then we go deeper into the consistent and deliberate word of God and the testimony of creation, where we can find that there are over 70 verses that refer to the movement of the sun, and 0 that refer to the movement of the earth. We have 23 verses that specifically say the earth isn't moving. Instead, they say it's stationary and immovable, resting on pillars, right? And I just find it interesting that he definitely says he makes something firm and solid and calls it the heavens, the firmament, right? And then he places the sun and the moon under it, and he calls them lights. In Joshua chapter 10, verse 13, he says, "And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day." So if it were true scripturally that the earth rotated and orbited the sun to cause a day, then why does God command the sun to stay still instead of the earth, right? He doesn't have to, because the earth is still, and it's the sun that moves, as depicted here in Joshua. So we go on to see what the Bible says about the moon. We have Luke 21:25. "And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring." Okay, so it's talking about end-time prophecy, and it says there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. And then it goes on to say that the sea and the waves will be roaring, right? What causes seas and waves to roar is sometimes earthquakes, I thought was noteworthy. We then have Isaiah 13, verse 10, "For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine." I thought it really interesting there that verse in particular outlines for us that God calls the sun a he and the moon a her, meaning that they are opposites, like we discovered with moonlight being cold. And we can go on furthermore to Acts 2, verse 20. "The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before that great and notable day of the Lord come. So now we're looking at prophecy of, the day of the Lord, of Jesus' return. In Joel 2 verse 31, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord. So in Revelation chapter 1, we read the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John, who bear record of the word of God and of the testimony of Jesus Christ and of all things that he saw. Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep these things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. Okay, so John the Revelator received these visions of prophecy to come in the last days, and he says to hear the words of it. So with that message in mind, let's turn ahead to Revelation chapter 6, starting at verse 12. And I beheld, when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. So there we have another correlation between an earthquake and the blood moon. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth out her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. So we have some vivid imagery there of the stars falling to earth, which I think that alone points out to us that we can see Jesus acknowledges that the stars are not suns, and the stars are not massively, bigger than the earth. Because things happen after the stars fall to earth here in the Bible. So if the stars were, trillions of times the size of earth, and they were massive balls of fire, then once they came down, the earth would have been obliterated. But that's not what we see happen in the scriptures. So Jesus acknowledges that the stars are not suns, and that they are not bigger than the earth. So the stars of the heaven fall, and then the heaven departed as a scroll when it's rolled together. And so that's another topic I want to save for another show, where it's clear that the Bible kind of makes it seem like the firmament will be broken or will be opened up, and the heavens will open up. So interesting stuff there. But the concerning question does come to mind, and possibly rightfully so, seeing as other end times prophecy seems to be coming true in these days. Is the super blood wolf moon the blood moon that is spoken of in Revelation 6:12? Is this the eclipse prophecy foretells regarding a pivotal end times event? Well, as exciting as that idea may be, I was a little surprised to see that from what the scriptures say, I don't believe this will be the case. Not yet, at least. For this, I quote Matthew 24:29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. So we know also from scriptures that the Messiah doesn't return and a rapture doesn't happen until immediately after tribulation. And just as Matthew tells us, the final blood moon will not happen until then as well. Matthew 25:13 goes on to say, Watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. And Mark reminds us again in chapter 13, verse 32, But of that day, of that hour, knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. So we've heard it said time and time again, no man will know the exact day of Christ's return. There have been innumerable guesses and predictions for that day, and of course they've all been wrong because they came from men. But God did tell us there will be signs in the heavens to look out for, and signs of the times that we must be mindful of. For me, many of these things feel as if they are true today, or coming true. In 2 Timothy 3, we have, This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, Traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures, more than lovers of God. Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. All of these things certainly feel true, or as if they're increasingly true day by day, you know? And then we have Matthew chapter 24. I've already read a couple things from it, but just all of it in context is really speaking about these days to me. So, and Jesus went out and departed from his temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, that there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nations shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. So, reoccurring theme of earthquakes, but I feel like nation rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and, you know, mass famines and pestilences is something that's kind of yet to be around the corner. Even though Earth has experienced some of those things in recent times as well as the past, it seems as if this verse is kind of talking about something much more volatile, much more worldwide. And then he goes on in verse 8, all these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you. He's talking to his disciples, right? And ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall arise, and shall deceive many. We see that, right? And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. And he that it shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. And then shall the end come. Then shall the end come, after the gospel is preached in all the world. So that's kind of a debate amongst Christians, is because of the use of the internet and how the Bible's been translated in every language. Has the gospel been shared with every corner of the earth, you know, with all peoples and nations? When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. So that's another event, the abomination of desolation, in the temple. In the third temple, it said, and I believe they're in works of getting the third temple built, if they haven't already. So the abomination of desolation has yet to come. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath. So a couple things there. We know that Jesus is saying, even unto the end times, the Sabbath day, he says, is still relevant. Okay? And then furthermore, we have the idea that those that be in Judea. And so he could mean one of two things there, according to, you know, interpretations, is that Judea be a physical place and a physical race of people, or that it be the body of Christ that will be escaping persecution and will want to flee the imminent destruction of New Babylon and the world, really, right? So he's saying you don't want to turn around to get anything. You know, you don't want to come back to take your clothes. Watch out for the ones with child, and pray that your flight, that your escape isn't in the dead of winter or on the Sabbath day, when you're supposed to be able to rest and keep it holy. Verse 21, for then shall be great tribulation. So after all this is the tribulation, and that's another period of time that many people are are, wondering if we are in right now, and I don't think so, just quite yet. So no matter how bad things are and are continuing to get, it's clear that the tribulation has not started, which will be worse, right? And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. So the elect, meaning, the body of Christ, the believers that follow his commandments. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. Here's an important thing. He said earlier, false Christ will come. He says again, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, and so much that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. So even God's people could be deceived by these false Christs and false prophets. So we know a story of an antichrist that will come, and it's quite possible he will say that he is Christ, and he will lead people to believe that he has, risen, he has returned, and whereas it won't be Christ. He says in verse 25, Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, right? We went over that earlier. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. So it's after the tribulation is when Jesus returns. So if it's clear the tribulation hasn't started and somebody's here saying it's Christ, don't believe them. Jesus said, don't do it. Now, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. That's something I've thought about and wondered too. I'd be curious what you guys believe. Is the trumpet something, the seven trumpets, something that we will audibly be able to hear? That would be cool if you just hear a worldwide trumpet. Awfully scary and exciting at the same time. But now learn of a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. That being said, man, ends off there with the days of Noah is where I'm going to stop that. But the days of Noah were as he spent, 100 years working on that ark that, God told him that he would need it. And it was part of the plan. And so it's not as if people didn't have a chance to save themselves, repent, and go and believe Noah when he told them it's coming. The flood is coming. These people were warned. And so I find it interesting. It's said to be scripturally evident that the door to the ark was open for quite some time. The doors were wide open before they were finished being built. So you had many people from far and wide hearing of this crazy guy that's working on this ark saying that a flood was coming. And they laughed, and they probably traveled there just to mock him in some cases. And then for 100 years he worked on that ark. When it finally started raining, up until that point, he had that door open for any man, woman, or child that was worthy of boarding that ark. But when it started raining, by the time it started raining, the door was already closed. And so multiple verses refer to Jesus as the door. He tells us several times he is the door. And so the people are being warned. I know that's part of what I'm compelled to do. So many days I get an overwhelming feeling of wanting to warn people, strangers even, but people I love, people I know. Really, it's a compelling feeling to want to reach out and try to think of a way that I can influence them to want to seek Christ and dive into the Word like I have started to do. And it's part of my mission, I feel. It's a message that I want to relay to the entire world, that we are approaching the end days and we are in the end days, and that it's going to be a bad time for anybody that's not protected and wearing the whole armor of Yahweh, right? So heed the message, share the message. Don't be afraid to speak up to the ones you care about and love. I know it would be an awful shame to spend eternity somewhere where you have everything you want with all the love and glory of God and praising Him, and not be able to share that with family members and loved ones and people you've known. I know for me, any and everybody I've ever known, and even the ones I haven't, I want to be able to see them there when we get there. I want for myself to be able to get there. And that's why I'm digging into all this and wanting to share it with you guys. So, that being said, thank you all for hanging in with me. I want to get back into a little bit of music before we close out the show. I hope nobody has gotten tired of hearing my songs. I know on the radio, they play songs to death until, what's popular is just played out and tired because it's no longer popular anymore since they played it 8 times an hour. So I don't play my music that often, but I will never give up a chance to share my music with people when I get the chance to. So that being said, even though I've played it before, I'd like to play one of my new songs. It's called Flat Smackin' by yours truly, WesBlazeMuziK. And we will be right back after that and a few other songs on the Geocentric Eccentric, Flat Earth Radio Live, FERlive.com.
Eat, sleep, debunk the globe, repeat. Eat, sleep, debunk the globe, repeat. Once you go flat, you don't go back. Got a bunch of globes back at home up in the trash. I'm not even really tripping if I get laughed at, cause everybody here is about to get flat smacked. Earth is flat, Jack, flatter than a flapjack. We bout to flat smack, globers get your backpack. I'm with my flat pack, globes in the trash sack. Azimuthal equidistant map up on my snapback. Flat smacking everybody at Joe's Crab Shack. Looking at us like what we're saying is so abstract. Lesson 1, no curvature there to be found. How can it be evolved if nothing about it is round? Lesson 2, 3/4 of the ground is covered in flat water. Do you hear the way that sounds? Lesson 3, take a look at the stars that you see at night. Same constellations that you've been seeing for all your life. And never trust NASA, cause nothing they say is right. They're lying right to our face and they mock us in plain sight. You can straight up see the wires in the green screen glitching, the water bubbles floating on the spacewalk missions. It's detestable. I refuse to be another vegetable. Pseudoscience garbage will to me be unacceptable. And anyone with eyes to see don't have to be susceptible. Dispose of your globe in the nearest waste receptacle. We backpacking all across the plane and we flat smacking activism right out in front of the university. Like how is it at night that we can see Venus and Mercury? Shouting out the proof that debunks the globe observably. Absurdities they taught to us as facts since the nursery. Courtesy of a sun-worshipping fraternity. Commercially, they perverted people universally, robbing us of truth like the biggest ever burglary. You heard of flat earth but didn't know it was the truth. But we didn't see it either till somebody showed us proof. So if you got a Facebook, we can keep you in the loop. It's official flat earth and globe discussion group, baby. Once you go flat, you don't go back. Got a bunch of globes back at home up in the trash. I'm not even really tripping if I get laughed at, cause everybody here is about to get flat smacked. Earth is no globe, closer to a snow globe. Flat earth proofs, boy, I got a boatload. Gotta keep it flat, that's the FE bro code. Yeah, we coast to coast and we coming to your postcode. Take a good look at the rocket footage in slow mo. So many let the camera trick, I don't see how they don't know. When will people see that it's distorted like a GoPro? You might not believe the earth is flat, but me, I know. I turn the heat up at the meetups, we in the streets and we speak up. And I'm effing from the feet up, trying to see if they can keep up. I know that they sleep, but we need them to leap up. So I'm specializing in waking the sheep up. Earth is a plane, geocentric contained. Open up a King James and it's saying the same. I know it's so easy to go with the grain, and it's strange the alternative sounds so insane. But we came to this thing just to change up the game, cause the lames wanna tell us we came from a bang. A treacherous trickery straight from the flame, and the devil's the one to be blamed. It's a shame. Wake up the matrix, shake up the fake with the truest of truth, and the atheists hate it. Cause we got a movement that blew through the roof. Take it to basics, yeah. To make an improvement, we gotta recoup. If you can debate it, then come to the page. It's official Flat Earth and Globe discussion group. Yeah. Eat, sleep, debunk the globe, repeat. Eat, sleep, debunk the globe, repeat. Eat, sleep, debunk the globe, repeat. Eat, sleep, debunk the globe, repeat.
Indoctrination blinded us all. From the very first day that we went to school, they put a globe in your face and that thing looked cool. The teacher explained how it all worked. Of course it sounded so berserk, but who was I to question it? Because I was just a tiny kid. It sounded crazy as could be, but teacher would never lie to me. She was real nice, she didn't know. She too was taught to believe in that globe. I don't blame her, it wasn't her fault. She was only repeating what she'd been taught. I went through life believing that lie. That spinning ball was now in my mind.
Don't let them take your mind.
Don't let them take your mind, man.
Don't let them tell you that you are not divine.
Don't let them do it, man, no.
Take control of your soul.
Take back control. Yeah.
Find the truth. Find it all.
Find it all, man. Yeah.
Don't believe their lies.
Don't believe it, man.
Let them take your mind.
Don't let them take your mind, man. Alright, man, listen up. So I'm hurling through space on a road to nowhere. So I live my life without a care, cause I was taught that there ain't no creator. That's what I was told from my educator. So I live my life so selfishly, there ain't gonna be no hell for me. I'll do what I want with no care for others, with no respect for my brothers. Until one day when I woke up and I drank some truth with my coffee cup. I learned that things ain't what they seem. This so-called reality is just a dream. There's deception everywhere that I look. The news, the TV, and in my school books. And pretty soon I'll realize that everything's just a pack of lies, man.
Don't let them take your mind.
Don't let them take your mind, man.
Don't let them tell you that you are not divine.
Don't let them do it, man. No.
Take control of your soul.
Take back control. Yeah.
Find the truth. Find it all.
Find it all, man. Yeah.
Don't believe their lies.
Don't believe it, man.
Let them take your mind.
Let them take your mind, man. Yeah, man. It's deception on a biblical level. It's orchestrated by the devil. Many think that hate don't exist, but that's what he wants, that's one of his tricks. But I found out that that dude's real, and I'll tell you, man, that's a bitter pill. So I questioned everything I was told. I had to question that spinning globe. I had to relearn it all again and get some truth inside this brain. And pretty soon I realized that the globe I was taught was a pack of lies. So I studied as hard as could be. I found the flat earth conspiracy. Man, it hit me like a ton of bricks. The globe I was taught was a devil's trick.
Don't let them take your mind.
Don't let them take your mind, man.
Don't let them tell you that you are not divine.
Don't let them do it, man. No.
Take control of your soul.
Take back control. Yeah.
Find the truth. Find it all.
Find it all, man. Yeah.
Don't believe their lies.
Don't believe it, man.
Let them take your mind.
Don't let them take your mind, man. I started to connect the dots, and I'm telling you, man, there are lots. I soon realized that the earth was flat. It's not a belief, man, it's a fact. And once I found out that reality, well, it did a funny thing to me. For a while there, I was pretty shocked, but now I know that there is a God. And once you get to that point of understanding, and once you know there ain't no moon landing, and once you know that space is fake, you view your life with a different take. It ain't just random chance that we're here. We ain't living on no stupid sphere. It ain't some ridiculous spinning ball. The earth is flat and God created it all.
Don't let them take your mind.
Don't let them take your mind, man.
Don't let them tell you that you are not divine.
Don't let them do it, man.
Take control of your soul.
Take back control.
Find the truth. Find it all.
Find it all, man.
Don't believe their lies. Let them take your mind.
Let them take your mind, man. Well, now I found out about all these lies. I live a completely different life. I stopped reading the news and turned off the TV. That thing is evil as can be. I started being a nicer guy, and God forbid I tell a lie. I treat people with more respect, and I've got me a wife that I've never neglected. Yeah, being good's working out for me. Now I ain't blinded and I can see. I know that there is a God above, and if I'm good, then He'll show me love. I try to live life selflessly to be the best that I can be. I treat people how I want to be treated since my indoctrination was defeated. So don't believe in the devil's lies because it's God he wants to hide. That's why they teach that spinning ball to make you think you ain't special at all. Don't believe what you're being told. Don't believe that you're evolved. It's all an accident and you are too. No, you're someone special and God made you.
Don't let them take your mind.
Don't let them take your mind, man.
Don't let them tell you that you are not divine.
Don't let them do it, no.
Take control of your soul.
You gotta take back control.
Find the truth.
Find the truth.
Find it all.
Find it all, man.
Don't believe their lies.
Don't believe it.
Let them take your mind.
Don't let them take your mind. Yeah, play that guitar.
circles trying to find the south, but if you're looking for the truth, you got to find it out. Next, I can't go to space, so we hit the roof. Get it, hit the roof, and it all came to light with 200 proofs. Now I'm just really sick of people lying to me. So when I tell the truth, don't come crying to me. Pick up the phone, get on the line with me. Line with me.